The outcome of the venture for Wesfarmers is quite disappointing when they enter into the UK market. Wesfarmers is a company concerned both shareholders and customer benefits, but it seems that they didn't actually providing benefits for customer in UK. The performance is not as well as they expected. They had suffered a 58% drop of net profit in a 4 year after spending more than 1 billion. Their business has still suffering losses. At the end, Wesfarmers decided to exit UK market to cut their losses, but they still own net debts of about 3 billion. When we look at their business structure and their profitability, the business they cover in Australia, it's hard to believe that they suffered such disaster losses. Especially Bunnings is one of the most important components of their business portfolio. Wesfarmers should be always clear about their sources of competitive advantages. They should investigate customer demands and position themselves rightly before entering into a new market, so that they can make sure it's an attractive option to be profitable. When sufficient knowledge about the new market has gathered, then they can choose the international strategy rightly to avoid suffering losses. It's necessary for Wesfarmers reviewing themselves, looking at their weak point. It's an important thing to be more responsible for either customers and shareholders when making the decisions. In order to have a better understanding on this issue, my associate Chamu will interview Perhan, an expert on this issue.
A sustainable source of competitive advantage.
I think Bunnings did have a sustainable source of competitive advantage, which originated from their growth strategies, including price policy, expanded services offer, marketing model, strong workplace culture, etc. Some of their strengths were their popular slogan, "The lowest price is just the beginning." Bunnings has committed to delivering the lowest prices, but not pretending to do it like other competitors have. So they do stick to their promises. They also have well-trained team members with a trade background, providing customers with expert advice and great service. And by developing a strong organizational culture where workers feel empowered, they do have as a result, they do have a great work culture. So yeah. And in terms of market segmentation strategy, Bunnings is doing very well at identifying potential customer segments. They target the customer who tends to buy power tools at home and build home centers and are less price sensitive, which also matches their market localization.
How do you think Bunnings attempted to position itself in the UK market?
Well, I think Bunnings, as you know, Bunnings already acquired a struggling DIY retailer, Homebase. I believe that this decision was made because Bunnings expected to position themselves as the company that revamped a struggling local company and brought it to success. After taking over, they attempted to stabilize themselves as an Australian firm conquering the UK market. However, this obviously failed miserably. As Mr. Bill Grimsey, who has run two of Britain's largest DIY retailers, made a statement to Fairfax Media that Homebase's current positioning is not successful and all the properties are either over-rented or overpriced. The attempt to inculcate the format of Bunnings Australia in the UK was not a good idea. Some UK customers also state that the environment changed very suddenly, and Homebase was more of the home products such as rugs and lamps, picture frames, and that kind of stuff. These were appealing to families, parents, and retirees, etc., and who'd love to pop in to just see if they could get a hold of anything that could brighten up their homes, and that kind of stuff. However, since Bunnings took over Homebase and rebranded it as Bunnings, their DIYs are more appealing to the workmen instead of families, and therefore it is now not any more of a browsing kind of place. It's more of a hardware store kind of vibe that it's giving off.
Do you believe the UK market was an attractive option for Bunnings?
I think a major brand like Bunnings would have reconsidered setting shop in the UK since they now wouldn't be able to easily access the EU through UK since Brexit is still ongoing. But there is uncertainty over what the final agreement between the UK and the EU will be. So there is uncertainty over the regulations like manufacturing standards and stuff like that. Also, I think they would expect slow growth in the UK as a result of Brexit's uncertainty. Their return on investment would have been low, so they'd have to reconsider, I feel. Further, their slow economic growth also means low income growth, and people's buying power wouldn't grow well enough, so consumption might not increase over the next 5 years, which sort of explains why Bunnings didn't really do well in the UK market. Further, with regards to their entry modes, Wesfarmers has used acquisition, which gave them quick access to the UK market by purchasing Homebase. While it gave them quick access and great control over their operations, it was also a risky entry mode as it was very expensive. Negotiations may have been quite long and complex, as with any merger acquisition. Their global strategy is another reason that Bunnings failed to make an impression in the UK market. While their use of global strategy was justified, it had its limitations. For instance, it is much less impressionable to the local markets, and it's more exclusively effective in places where a regional integration occurs. Regional integration is also a process which neighboring states enter into an agreement in order to upgrade cooperation through common institutions and rules. And finally, I think the last reason I think that the UK market might have not been ideal for Bunnings is there are already well set competitors who have a greater rapport with the local consumers, as homegrown businesses just like Bunnings does in Australia, such as Wix and B&Q, which have over 200 and 296 stores respectively. By taking all these factors into account, one can easily come to the conclusion that the UK market isn't a market that Wesfarmers should have been attracted to.
What international strategy did Wesfarmers adopt in the UK, and what recommendations or alternative approaches do you suggest?
Wesfarmers decided to adopt a global strategy in the UK, as we discussed before. They did so via the acquisition of Homebase in the UK, and they intended to rebrand it with the Bunnings name throughout a 5-year plan. Wesfarmers removed the Homebase's kitchen and bathroom products and replaced it with Bunnings staples of garden and home improvement products. For the Bunnings entire British marketing slogan was the same as the Australian slogan: lowest prices are just the beginning. By doing what I've just mentioned, they have maintained a global strategy. And why global strategy was not suitable in the UK would be, for one thing, the weather in the UK is totally different to the Australian weather. It's wet and it's rainy, and it makes it less likely for the British locals to have their own private backyard, which could lead to a low demand for hardware products to begin with. Further, Bunnings also expelled the local team that Homebase had, and they brought in their own experts and their own team. And they were unable to understand the local market in time, and this was what resulted in them having to leave the UK market. The situation was that the customers didn't know the Bunnings brand to begin with, and it was making it difficult for Bunnings to enter the local market. There were different customer needs in the UK, so it was difficult to understand the market and make the right decisions, and that's where Bunnings really struggled. But I feel the better move would have been for them to use a transnational strategy. A transnational strategy, through coordinating and controlling, can share resources and the latest technology being experienced. By decentralizing the power, customer demand will be met easily and will increase local flexibility. What's great about this strategy is that this method is more cost efficient. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Behan, for your time, and it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
In conclusion, we can see Bunnings do have sustainable source of competitive advantage like price policy, the service order, and marketing model. But Bunnings' mistake on positioning directly leads their failure. The DIY hardware market is not an attractive option for British. The global strategy not working due to cultural diversity and uncertainty market. Transnational strategy seems to be the better one considering both marketing effective and cost efficiency.